of all, thank you for having me here. This is my first time, so I'm a virgin. Okay, but I'm going to go through this, and I've chopped this down tremendously, but it's one of the more important topics, and it's really deep. And so I'll probably fly through it pretty fast. So strap on. Anyway, how hospices, oh shoot. How to decrease turnover to 5% and attract top talent. Because the point is, we're human beings and human organizations serving humans. We better get human down and study that. And so really most of our perspective comes from the work with around 1,200 hospices and monthly benchmarking of 898 data elements with 922 cross calculations. And also hospices in Europe, as well as the United States and the Pacific Rim. The point is, you can get best practices from other countries related to hospices. And that's about it on that. And of course, whenever you're measuring most things that can be measured, you can put them on a normally distributed bell curve. And we have to know what the 50th percentile is to have any legitimate claim of being a professional in any profession. We call this the herd, the huddled masses. But the point is, we all can be freed or liberated to go to this place.
To the impossible.
I don't. And one of the things, and the thing is, even though you measure things, but frankly, most of the important things in life are beyond measurement. Spirituality, love, unconditional, all that. But this is really what we want to be studying. We need to know. Is there a pointer thing? Okay, right here. We have to know this to be a professional. This is really what this is about. And this would be the things that are unusual. What are the hot dog hospices doing that are living over the long term in the 90th percentile? And we know three distinct things about these organizations. First, every one of them have unique and powerful methods of people development. You won't find things like orientation or anything like that there. Of course they wouldn't be doing stuff like that. Highly spiritual. Well, where's that on the financial statements? Well, you'd almost have to know these CEOs and organizations to know. Next, they all have unique and different compensation practices. Nobody here exists paying just salary and hourly and these traditional methods. You can't. Can you get there? Maybe. We've just never seen it. Okay, enough of that. And the one thing I was going to say is that most of the frustrations and issues in the hospice world have already been solved or greatly alleviated already. All we have to do is copy or imitate or have the humility to do what other people have done successfully. Because usually it's fear and pride that hold people back. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in this particular topic, it's helpful to visualize any managers you have that have been very good at retaining talented people. Just to keep in mind, I always keep about 4 of them in mind from different hospices. And that helps. And even I can kind of include myself there because we have just stacks of CEOs and folks that want to work for us. Just never have to advertise. And really the only people that leave are just people that are not a cultural fit, or I don't feel like they have the horsepower anymore to get where we need to go. So, really the distinction between voluntary separations and involuntary. Okay, just a couple quick things. Loss of talented people is the #1 destroyer of value. When Steve Jobs died, there's a likelihood that Apple's stock was going to go down, right? Great loss. But being Apple and being so advanced in a lot of these ideas, it didn't because they had Tim Cook ready. But this is what's going to destroy quality, value, the whole thing. When an organization reviews its list of problems, the majority are either directly or indirectly related to the loss of people, especially clinicians. And when I was looking at this year, I was just looking at different comments, nursing shortage, all these lame excuses. Can't keep people, can't pay your staff well, finding, you can just read them here. This is where the majority of problems in organizations are. So this is the jugular. Okay, what's turnover reality? Well, there's all kinds of studies. Really, I'll say nursing ranges 21 to 27%, depending on who you're reading. Social workers, about 22 to 26 aides, 23, 24. Regardless, any way you look at this, you can have no legitimate claim to quality with anything close to this. Okay. So to solve this, let's just go right to the jugular here. Two things. Just like running a hospice anymore, you can really get it down to two things. Perfect visits, perfect documentation, and having extraordinary clinical managers. That will solve just about everything. Two moves. Okay, so to solve this, provide an electric, transformative work atmosphere through focus on clinical managers. Phase one. Two, pay better than other employment options. And really, both of these are a form of compensation. You're compensated through your work atmosphere, not monetarily, but through energy, karma, all those good things. And then we also like to have the, besides the karma dollars, we like to have the other ones too. Okay, so let's get into this. And as CEOs and stuff, don't look at this like a big lift. This is an opportunity and to create something just majestic. Just think about this. You have all these milquetoast, huddled mass organizations that look just alike. I can go to 10 hospices, and 9.5 of them will look alike. So what talk about creativity, get some creativity to make the thing, the juice up the atmosphere. Like Michaela's doing. By the way, you're sitting in a transformational, the work that Cedar Valley, what's your turnover now? What, 9%? And she has done, it's jaw dropping what they have done. And you're all doing tons of this. Okay. So hospice is profound work. You really can't do this long before it gets into your soul. And so embrace this, and it's the only form of healthcare where spirituality is mandated. In fact, this is our definition of hospice. Holistic, integrated, interdisciplinary, managed care with mandated spirituality by Medicare. So be spiritual. And that's the great excuse that why we can kind of do this different. And when you think about the key characteristics of those organizations operating in the 90th percentile, why spirituality, the thing that's not even on the balance sheet or the income statement or the statement of cash flows or in any of the metrics. One of the reasons, but it's important and a key character, and it's unobvious. Okay, and as far as the money issue, the pay. Combine this incredible mission with the fact there's more than enough money to fund a world-class hospice experience and pay people extremely well, and is above market, then how can we not attract and retain the most talented people in our communities? You have a great mission, and there's truckloads of money. But the huddled masses say, oh, there's not enough because they've taken all the Medicare nuts and eaten them all up. So, oops, forgot about winter. Okay, so let's keep going. Clinical manager is the key. You want to solve 70% of retention and attraction. You go to work on developing frontline clinical managers, right? Because 70%, this is a Gallup thing, of an employee's development, morale, and retention will come from the immediate manager. So there's the jugular right there. After training thousands of clinical managers, and again, every year we just have thousands that come through. Not every year is thousands. We wore up the floors at the mountaintop. I'm always a bit taken back that in healthcare especially, most don't see the direct connection between themselves and retention. And there's this tendency to blame other factors, the culture, the CEO, pay, or whatever, and not totally own it themselves. Okay, most managers do not grasp their part in taking care of the people. That's what the large hospice in Florida, and it's just like, well, They just come and quit, you know. And I said, did you go into the orientation? And sit with that CNA and say, hey, this is going to be great to have you on the team. This is going to be exciting. We're going to do great things. No, that thought never even came. Okay. So again, 70% comes from the immediate manager. People would rather have a crappy job working for a great manager than a great job for a crappy manager. And you think about most hospices, most hospices don't pay well, in my opinion, when it's perfectly possible. But yet, we still retain a lot of our people. So this points to the salary. They believe in the mission. But when the money is there, why not? To me, it lacks integrity not to pay people well, if we manage well. Talented people don't quit the organization, they quit the manager. Okay, that's a great statement. Okay, so, and also, if the manager's not impressive, why would any smart, talented person want to work with them? And this goes to the CEO level. As far as, again, Michaela, I'll just say, you know, again, you got the cool factor going on. Everybody in the organization kind of gets the cool factor going on, right? And you were doing great. But see, there's a direct connection. And so really, even as CEOs, we have to own our turnover. And if you lose impressive, talented people that go on, I'm not saying sometimes people don't have another dream to follow or whatever. Man, you got to take the mirror and say, what's going on with me? And also take it down to that direct relationship with that front line. Okay, big investment, Wall Street company paid me a bunch of money to put together kind of a brand new hospice model for them years ago. And we blew up the organizational chart, you know, not the pyramid scheme or anything like that. So anyway, on top you have God, because you know we're a spiritual thing. The boss, patients, families, community, and then it goes right into front lines of care, top of the chart. And then right below that, there's your clinical managers, and this is the jugular right here. You know, where you build your strength. And so this is where we focus. When we were building this Baldridge, the only hospices won the Baldridge. That was where we focused on. Okay. Our people systems, normally this is where this is a pretty deep, and again, I know I'm going pretty fast here. The point is you need to be thinking systematically, holistically. It's not just one little thing here. We divide up your people system into people attraction or talent attraction, people selection of those that want to work for you, who do you pick, how do you develop these people, and then how do you retain. Each is a separate thing, and of course these are the two things that we're going to really be looking at here, or are looking at. And so when you break that down and you train your nurses in 28 days, or 35 days is probably the max you'd want to do, perfect. Why does anybody come to an organization, talent attraction? They want the atmosphere, and they would prefer to be paid well. Both a form of compensation. And then you have how you select them, then you have how you develop them, and as far as the development, this is part of retention as well. Employees want to believe that they're well trained, elitely trained in fact. And an organization must transform this desire from a want to a certainty. A certainty where they walk out and they go, I have never been this well trained. I didn't know a visit. I didn't know that we could go days or weeks without a single documentation error or complaint. You've made the process of doing a visit easy. And nothing's missed. Okay, so that's important. And then, why do people stay? Same two things. Atmosphere again, their comp. But then we have a couple, then that comes down to that relationship with the immediate supervisor or the clinical manager. And so you've got to, have the right people doing this. So why would you select anybody to be a clinical manager? because they could teach, because that's the job. That's the job, is to do the ride-alongs. I go to some hospices, our minimum is 6 ride-alongs a year, where they're, you certify they're doing the perfect visits and all that. There are some hospices, they don't even do it once. Your ability to teach and to create this supportive, transformative relationship with your folks and your team. Okay. So things to do to create, we'll say, conditions for success for managers. The reason we say conditions for success is because you can't control people. The best you can do is take that seed, that rose seed, put it in the ground, give it the right light, nurture it with the best intentions. Results up to God at the end. Okay, so the first thing I would say, that overall organization, that we offer compelling vision, belief, big enough to capture them, but not so large that you lose them, that loses energy that they don't believe it can be done. Next, support from the top. Open door. You have a voice, a valued voice. Manage to results, not anal retentive measures. Okay, so financially, we have folks measure, they manages to a contribution margin. Hire all the nurses you want, spend all you want on your medications, but if you go 1 cent above this, obviously probably we will take, you'll feel it in your paycheck. You'll be paying for it after that. So this gets rid of budgets and all things like that, but so we're not telling people, and that allows for creativity. When you're not micromanaging people and you're just managing to a result, that's when you compare all your teams and go, man, Southwest team's killing it. Let's do more of the Southwest. Ooh, North isn't doing so well. Not going to do so much North. And same with measurements. With this world of smart people that are coming up with all these measurements. And to me, when you're critical or when people just keep adding and adding, that's not impressive. If you can find 1 or 2 measurements that covers all the rest of them, that if you are hitting those well, it solves all the other measurements. That's the stuff that creates focus and makes things easier. So manage to a result. Create conditions for self-regulation. This is a concept where really you want to hire people that don't need to be managed. Don't hire people that need to be managed. And that can be done. And again, this is pretty deep stuff, and we'd have to go. But that's really what you want to get, where you're as flat as a pancake, and you need very few folks, even if you have 1,000 patients a day. We manage hospices and created some that, we just need a few FTEs and the indirects. Because if you're doing perfect visits with perfect documentation, you aren't getting complaints. You don't have to be Z-picks and things like that. And so what's the manager to do? Ride-alongs. The job is to teach and coach. Okay, I'm going to go really quick here. Pre-recorded self-learning modules, pre-recorded managerial scenarios. What's it look like to take care of your people? How do you do accountability without losing talent? All that. How to teach accountability. Public speaking skills. All this stuff increases the personal power, confidence, liberation of that position. Again, you want to put a lot of energy, this sheer focus on that clinical manager. That's 70% of solving turnover issues. Okay, so back to this. Electric atmosphere, better pay. Keep going here. Just taking care of your people in general. Okay? So we know the clinical manager is key to this, and we know all these bad things that happen of not taking care of you. Okay? Frustration, low CAP scores, all that. Again, provide that atmosphere, pay better, we've talked about that. Remove energy sucks. I refuse to work with anybody that sucks energy. You can have an interaction with someone if you feel there's been an extraction and it's a habitual thing, they are not qualified to work at the organization. Eliminate normal 8 to 5 work hours. Okay, this goes to self-regulation a little bit. We're in a business where most of our work is done autonomously. We don't have someone that can supervise. And you can get rid of all your work hours where, hey, you get to set your own pay, you get to set your own work hours. The only rule is you got to do 100% of the standards, 100% of the standards, high standards or whatever you come up with. And you have to make visits when it's vast working. Those are the rules. So if the caregiver gets home at 6:30, that's when you do it. Okay? That's when you do the visit. But you can start your day at 11 if you want. Or take Thursday off. Okay. Simplify your EMR. One of the main things I do when I'm evaluating an EMR for a hospice, I want my clinicians happy. So we will just go in and flatten things because there's a bunch of smart people have added a bunch of new screens. We say, what is the absolute minimum data set I need? I need an EMR that can bill, and then we can do an extraordinary note and a plan of care. I mean, I can solve a lot with just writing a note. Sorry about that. Okay, sustainable standards, not a bunch of wild, ever-changing standards or anything like that. Just set sustainable things that people can do. De-emphasize overtime. Pay it when you need it, but then you have to talk because we designed this where there shouldn't be any overtime necessary. Okay, make phone and visit work easy to do 100% of the standards on a day-to-day basis. Help your people believe that they're working for an elite, world-class organization. Plan, sequence, this is how we do it. This is our way. And it's easier to do because so many organizations get what they say. Have high standards. Talented people are not impressed with low standards. But, anyway. In fact, talented people are frustrated by low talent people because they'll have meetings and want to form committees. Organizations have lots of meetings of dysfunction. I have 2 meetings a week. Okay, remove the need for clinical managers to have to monitor documentation, monitor productivity, do annual evaluations, terminate employees. All those can be done by the system, thus freeing enough time for clinical managers to do ride-alongs in the first duty of being a manager. And again, get rid of your meetings, get them down, and use massive amounts of volunteers, from 20 to 50% of all your labor coming from the community. Now that's going to take some spirituality, folks. Our highest hospice right now has a profit margin of 47%, and over 50% of all labor, of course, is done by the community. So create a lifestyle for people. Work hours, set your own pace, spiritually rich, personal development oriented. Okay. And to do this, you have to do the lifestyle. Okay, we're getting close. Perfect visits, perfect documentation. I'm not going to go through this, but this is a key because this brings such tremendous, when you do not have things breaking at your organization, it makes life and everybody happier, easier, all this stuff. And perfect in our means to the standards of the organization. Plus, last I checked, our return policy in hospice sucks. You blow the death scene. I mean, you got a negative divot in your karma. We've got to be perfect. We got to be as good as making John Deere tractors. Okay, so let's keep going here. I could go through this, all that, but I'll just say this: perfect visits will cure most quality and financial woes. Happy CAP scores, happy folks, complaints, billing goes out right on time, financial surge, all the things you want. Your turnover go down. Okay. And so, spirituality, we talk about, this is an unobvious factor by most successful hospices. We've already talked about that a little bit. Why this is this way is the demographic of people coming to hospice seek meaning and purpose. It's not nursed systematically. Think about when people describe coming to, I was called, I was led. And the organizations that somehow worked out consciously or unconsciously, that you feed that. There's a key. There's an indication of where we need to be going. And I've already said that. Okay, the spirituality topic brings us to accountability. You want to decrease turnover, you start to teach accountability on a deep, deep, deep level. Because this is the topic of personal transformation. And I don't believe this quite anymore. I can change my mind, right? We all can change, right? That's growth, that's evolution. But accountability is owning one's life without blaming others or circumstances. Basically, what we're saying, why we use this as the topic of transformation, and you only hire people that want spiritual evolution or growth, is that when you own your life, you're not blaming others. You're not being the victim. Oh, I can't do it because of this. I can't do it. That doesn't get an organization anywhere. Even if you're in an iron lung, you can at least use your attitude about it. And people have built great factories from an iron lungs. Even if you were hit by a drunk driver. I mean, just get off of blame and own it and say, this is where I'm at. And the skill of the manager is really that of doing accountability without losing talent. How do you do that? Because it's kind of sometimes painful. You're outside of standard. Let's talk about this. Your orientation, whatever. Again, that's that job of that clinic manager. Okay, I've already talked about that. Some ways to teach that. Create a standardized definition of accountability for your organization. Accountability needs to be hired for right off the bat. If people aren't going to be willing to be held accountable, don't hire them. They're just going to be weenies and wreck your culture. Next, we use 3 questions normally when we start IDT or any meeting. The first is, what are you? You're a feeling. The second, what do you see yourself as? The teacher. But this is what everyone says back. The third thing is, what day is it? And everybody in the hospice would say, this is the best day of my life. And then you go, what does that mean? That means I'm going to own my life. I'm going to own at least my attitude in that. And I'm not going to play the victim card. I'm going to recognize my personal power. Yes. And these are things that culturally, we'll get there. That, of course, System 7 will do that too. Compensation, this is the last thing we're going to talk about here, is your number one tool to shape behavior. Because we all kind of get that we need a few nuts in this life to kind of carry on in a modern society. Why do this? Because it works. But most organizations are afraid to do it. I mean, this is, yeah. And again, we were talking that there's more than enough money, and intelligence shows us exactly the opposite when you look at the data. Okay, the formula is less people paid well. And that just frees up a whole bunch of money for folks. But everybody's got to be doing their job. No slackers allowed, and your systems would detect that. Even though money is not the biggest form of compensation, but it's surely important. People would prefer to be paid what they are worth, or what they feel they're worth, right? And we want to have the best paying system around. We want to have the fairest system around. And a lot of that needs to be on the clinical manager. Look at your, a lot of hospices have trouble even getting clinical managers. Well, sexy up the job. Where anybody coming in has a shot at this high-paying, cool teaching position. Okay. And I'm not going to go through all of this. I mean, it's a day and a half seminar, but basically, normally we use it anymore, what I'll call an additive approach. Since most people aren't being outrageously paid, we lock them in whatever they're making right now, either hourly or year salary. Then we add 5% bonus on top, it's called standard bonus. And basically, we have compliance monitor the charts, and then finance or whatever, how the ER monitor the productivity. Basically, if anybody's outside of standard, that 5% goes away automatically. No big deal, it's just gone. But it's additive. And then if people go beyond a certain excellent, they might make another $3, $4, $5, maybe $1,400 per pay period more if they do really well in the system. So with that, but what you find when you have your systems and you're not allowing really any defects, again, your quality goes up, everything, and you find you need less people. And so people think, oh, and also if that clinical manager can't manage that contribution margin, which is financially, if they go 1 penny above that, 10% of their pay is going up. But, I mean, what's the upside? RNs will probably make usually 5 to 15, sometimes even 20 grand more what they're making. Aides, usually between the $2,000 and $6,000 increase. I mean, this is where you can just blow away your competitors. Social workers, 5 to 12. Managers, if they can handle a big team, and this is where size comes in it, they can make just truckloads of money. And that's part of sexing this thing up. So compensation really is key in people attraction and people retention. Okay, I think that's enough. Questions? Insights? Because, you know, we're all just layers and we need each other. Yes, sir.
You said, you know, hiring people. What's your hiring practices? 2 interviews, 3 interviews?
Oh, no. Well, normally there's a complete system. The first thing is you run an outrageous ad. We don't know your name, but we know the type of person you are. And if you desire spiritual growth and to be paid really, this is the place for you. But we don't want to see you. Go to the website, and then the website will do most of the screening. First, find out whether you're going to be cultural fit as far as subscribing to the vision. Then you test, because you test on anything. Any trainings where people aren't at least being tested out intellectually as well as like in your labs. Is this a joke? Really. Anyway, so we let the website do a lot of it. Then you'll have one, if you're a nurse, there's like 35 tricky confidence questions. Then they have to write a note and all that. And then the last one would be probably a Hartman value system, Steve Byron method. And then at that point, then a phone thing. I'm just saying, before we ever see you, we already know pretty much, a lot about you. There's a phone segment, because we want to know how your voice sounds before we ever look at you. Since more and more of the care experience is going to be done over the phone. Okay, so there's quite a bit in that selection process. Yes.
Talk about your own hours.
Yes.
Healthcare is 24 hours anyway. It's
Yes.
nonstop, but there's this balance between personal life, professional life, and if you don't have 8 to 5, but you have to be there at 6:30, but you can start at 11. How would you, if you were to implement something like that? How would you? Because the complaint might be, I don't ever have set hours. I never know.
Yeah, but people get to manage their hours. Our thing is that we want to treat everyone as a true professional. And that people, put it this way, the work that used to take 44 hours and this kind of thing usually goes about 35. Because good people go, I get this. If I do really, really quality visits, I end up actually having to do less visits, but people are happy because they're prepared. They're not freaking out on anything. I've taught well, because teaching is the main thing that a clinician does, not provide the care. Because the patient, the caregiver is one that provides the care. So that's some people say, I'm off. But what we find is that leads to shift mentality. And people go, and they do crappier visits, and then the cleanup crew, which is on call, ends up coming in and doing them. And normally in this kind of thing, on-call activity goes down from 50 to 70%. Because you don't really, if you have a lot on call, you've got real quality issues. You should have very little on-call coming.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In one of your slides, you mentioned the importance of recharging. There was one of your slides with the spirituality. But we all recharge differently. To what degree do winning hospices recharge collectively by corporate outings and things like that? Do you have any best practices on how to recharge?
Just do it a lot. Every time you have a win, a big win, I mean, celebrate it, have the kegger, well, maybe, or whatever. But to celebrate them, so I really don't have any magic, formula as far as the things. My main thing is you have to keep it alive and vibrant and purposeful. And if something starts to feel worn out or lose energy, chuck it. Dream up something new. So, very non-specific. Yes.
I think one of the struggles we have with our hospice is we have a very large on-call team, and we don't want to burden them with meetings constantly to bring them into the group, but they do tend to get more feel like an outsider to the day.
You mean the on-call?
Yes, our on-call. So, do you have like any sort of suggestions on how to engage them without burdening?
Well, first of all, they shouldn't be that busy. That's the first thing. And normally they are a function of compliance. I mean, in our type, they're not assigned to teams or anything like that, because that way they're the eyes and ears of quality. So to have them engage, I don't know. I've never really had seen any big disconnect. They're just part of the team. Now, with that said, they are the most seasoned of seasoned clinicians. We pay them extremely well, even if they're not, and then they have other things they do. So they'd already get what's going on because they've been with the organization so long and they know our proprietary methods and the way we do things. So that's probably a bad answer, but I would,
The last two
there's
questions.
one.
You had one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, we were talking about clinical managers, and what would you say a good ratio for a clinical manager for, say, staff members or patients?
As far as, really, it depends on the. See, our thing is it's cultures of liberation. Whatever you can handle and do 100% of the standards. Now, with that said, with grace, a clinician might have one, if they have one or two. Or a clinical manager has one or two clinicians that is out standards. Well, they know what their work plan is really for that next two pay periods, or next pay period. Some people will hit their lid at 80 and just not be able to do much.
Staff members or
Patients.
Patients.
Yeah, and see, this is where we don't, even though there's all, you need to put out your standards of what your staffing models and visits and all that will look like. You don't want to be dictatorial and say this is exactly what you have to come in with each of that defeats creativity. So that managing that result says hire all the people. I mean, you want to do that. But again, if you go over, you're paying for it. And that makes people, and it's very easy to spend other people's money. Whereas we tend to manage well when it's our money. And that team is that so. Because I've seen some people be able to run, clinical manager, 200 ADC, no problem. And some, you get to 50 and it's, well, and then you go, well, maybe the 50 is not really the caliber we want here. So I think that's a variable based on individual capability, actually.
I was just going to speak to the on-call issue. So one of the things that I noticed when I was having a disconnect with after-hour staff was because I wasn't connecting with them as their clinical manager. And so it's really helpful to remember that even though we work during the day, to take either one time a month or one time a week, whatever that level of your personal on-call is, to just be with them and mentor and mold them and spend that time with them at their hours instead of having the expectation of them coming during the hours we normally work. And that really changed just their attitude in general of, wow, you're in the trenches and care about the hours I work versus me having to come in at 1 o'clock every afternoon or 1 o'clock once a week to clock those. And so that's something that sometimes we take for granted or we forget about because the day-to-day madness takes over. So.
Good point. Okay.
Bravo and thank you.